Welcome to the latest edition of Shares Spotlight. I'm here today with Dorian Gonsalves, the Chief Exec of Belvoir. Hi Dorian.
Hello there.
So the UK property market seems to have stalled. How's Belvoir coping?
I think it really depends how you define stalled. The numbers of property sales transactions are undeniably down year on year, but not quite to the extent that some of the doomsayers tend to put across. I mean, the actual stats are that property sales are down by just shy of 2% year on year. There has been a more significant downturn in June and July this year, which in terms of transaction numbers, but I don't think that's really a surprise due to the the uncertainty of Brexit. And if I was a first-time buyer, I think I would probably hold back for 2 to 3 months to see what the outcome of the Brexit discussions are going to be. So property sales numbers have fallen slightly. As a business, we don't have much exposure to London. So 93% of our revenue is derived from outside of the M25. So we're not exposed to the the sort of peaks and troughs of the London market. On the letting side, the lettings industry is still very buoyant. There are 13 million people renting in the UK. We're starting to see rents nudging up now as a result of various government sort of interventions, and the business is performing well. I mean, to put it in perspective, we're 48% up year on year in revenue, so I think it's fair to say that despite the backdrop, our business is performing very well.
Do you see Belvoir making any more acquisitions to grow the financial services part of the business?
I think never say never. I think because we are very opportunistic when it comes to looking for suitable opportunities that meet with our strategy. We have acquired 2 financial services businesses in the last 18 months, the last 2 years. The first was Brook Financial Services, which comprised of around 35 mortgage advisors. The second was Mab Gloucester, which we reported in back end of November last year, which brought on another 87 advisors. But from that strong base, that was a starting point for us. Prior to these acquisitions, we hadn't had any involvement in financial services at all. But what we've got 300 good quality estate and letting agent offices. We've got lots of footfall, lots of traffic, and we want to introduce financial services to this traffic as well as our existing database. So that's the strategy behind financial services. Since the acquisitions, we've grown our mortgage advisors by 13 net in the first half of this year, which is a great result. We've got another 15 advisors in the pipeline, and so I suspect we'll hit 150 advisors by the end of this year. And that growth is organic, it's not by acquisition. So we've had 13 advisors join this year net. If we sort of reach 150, that'll be 25 net in a 12-month period. My point being, we don't need to acquire anything else. We can develop the FS side of the business organically rather than by acquisition.
Now, with stamp duty back on the political agenda, how do you see any changes affecting Belvoir?
And stamp duty is an interesting point. I think that there are so many different variations of how stamp duty could be changed to help make the market better. But then there's a huge argument over what define better. Is better a market that's freed up with more transactions happening, and if the market does free up with lots more transactions, it's likely that house prices will go up. So if that's the definition of better, then a change to stamp duty will benefit the market. I think that there have been a lot of coverage about stamp duty in the last 2 weeks, so quite a strange turnaround with Sajid Javid, interviewed by The Times. He said that he was considering making sellers pay stamp duty rather than buyers, which from an estate agent's perspective, I suspect that sellers would just add the amount of stamp duty to the price before they put the property on the market, so buyers will still end up paying stamp duty either way. And then interestingly, within 24 hours, Sajid Javid changed, or the interview wasn't quite correct, whichever way, and he confirmed that in fact he's not looking to make sellers pay stamp duty. So there has been absolutely no confirmation as to whether stamp duty will change or not. I suspect it will change, but government, it's very difficult for anybody to announce a change in stamp duty well in advance of the change happening, because the net effect of that is that the housing market will stall in between. So maybe towards the end of the year, sort of November time, we expect some sort of announcement that will be intended to give the market a push.
So has a clampdown on landlords charging excessive fees to tenants reduced the number of landlords active in the market? And if so, has it actually impacted Belvoir?
Landlords have not charged tenants fees at all. It's normally the agent who acts on behalf of the landlord. And we have already been through this once in Scotland back in 2012 when tenant fees were banned. We didn't lose any offices as a result, and in fact the market in Scotland is very healthy. What did happen in Scotland in 2012 was that rents pushed up just over 5% in the year immediately after the tenant fee ban, and I suspect that exactly the same will happen in England. In fact, we've got the longest running rental index in the UK, and our rental index is already showing that rents are rising at twice the rate as they were this time last year. So has it put sort of landlords off? No is the answer, because landlords are relatively unaffected by the ban on tenant fees. The only impact on landlords is that agents may well put their fees up because they've lost a section of their income, and landlords generally will increase rents as a result of higher costs.
So how resilient is Belvoir for a possible recession or a downturn or a change in market conditions?
And if we think back, it wasn't very long ago before since we had a serious downturn in the property market. So starting in the back end of 2007, and then through to 2012. And what happened in 2007 and 2008 was that property transactions halved. So typically UK transactions run at about 1.2 million transactions a year. In 2008 and 9, that dropped to 600,000 to 700,000 transactions. So broadly, it halved. And the estate agency side of the business will undoubtedly be impacted if property transactions fall, but that's only a relatively small part of our business. We are still predominantly a residential lettings business. If you strip out financial services, our revenue is split broadly 80-20 in favour of lettings, and typically what happens exactly what happened during the last downturn was that if a seller doesn't want to sell because they can't achieve the price that they're looking for, but they still need to move house for a reason. It could be a marital split. They could need to move house because of a new job. Typically that person will rent. Exactly the same with a first-time buyer. So if there is a downturn on the transaction side, I suspect that the letting side will do very well out of that.
Thanks very much, Dorian, and thank you for watching.